Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Getting Dirty in the Neverwinter Nights 2 Toolset. Alright, we are still playing Path of Evil, and we recently entered a town called Moran. And within that town, there's an inn where we recently went into, and we talked to the barkeeper, and apparently he is identifying magical items for 0 gold pieces, as you can see here in this scene. It says identify 0 gold pieces. I don't think so. I'm suspecting that is probably some kind of bug. Maybe Kamal, the author of this mod, did that intentionally, but I'm thinking no. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. We're actually going to disable. Yeah, there's a way to disable a merchant from even identifying magic items at all. So I think that's what we're going to do, because I find it highly unlikely that a tavern keeper is going to identify magic items for you in the first place, let alone identifying them for 0 gold pieces. So we are in a new module folder now. So let's open up our module directory here, and let's do a little common sense test. Let's take a look at these. As you can see, one of them is called Moran. That's probably a good tip off that that's the module folder that we need to be into. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the tool set, and let's come up here to File, and let's go to Open Directory, and let's scroll down to where our modules are located, and let's go to the Moran folder, and let's open her up. This might take a little bit to load up completely, so I'll see you in a moment. Okay, now we are completely loaded up, and let's take a look at the areas. And just looking at them, I can see N1 and N2. So let's use a process of elimination. It's going to be one of these two. Let's do the first one. Double click it and let's open her up, and let's see if this is the N in question. And yep, that looks like it's the N in question. Okay, so here is the innkeeper that we were talking to. If you talk to him in his dialogue, it'll open up a store. And as I showed you in previous episodes, how that kind of works. As you can see, the store is right here next to him. That's this little waypoint looking thing with a red flag on it. As you can see, it's Tavern Shop, and the tag is Tavern 001. Now, this is where you can set all kind of prices and stuff like that, and also identify price. This is the one we're trying to deal with. Identify price. As you can see, it's set to 0. What this actually represents is how much it's going to cost to identify some item that needs to be identified. So, for example, if I put 100 in here, that means this guy will charge you 100 gold pieces to identify an item. But if you set this to -1, like that, it'll actually disable that merchant's ability to even identify anything. Obviously, setting it to 0 is not going to be good, because that means it's going to cost nothing to identify. But for a tavern keeper to do that, nah. While we're here, let's take a look at a couple other things in this behavior list here. You'll see will not buy list. And here you can put things in here. Let's open it up. Like things he won't buy at all from you. There's a pretty extensive list right here of things he won't buy. If you click on these, it'll put it over in this list over here. And the next one, will only buy. It's the same thing. Just select what the items are that he will only buy. And you'll see one here set for black market. It says black market price % for buying items from the player. Right now it's set to 0%. And there's another one here that says black market, and it's set to false. What this means is he will buy or not buy stolen items. Some items have a little flag on them where you can check where it's true if it's a stolen item or not. So only black markets will buy those items that are flagged as stolen. So if this is set to true, that means he will buy stolen items. If this is kept on false, that means he won't buy stolen items. Now this black market price percentage for buying, this is what the percentage of the normal price that this black market will offer for buying the item from you. So for example, if this was set to 50, or I think it might be -50, I'm not entirely sure yet. We might have to test that a little bit. If this is set to -50, let's assume that. If it's set to -50, that means he'll only give you 50% of the normal price of the item. So let's say, for example, if you were selling a stolen item to him and it would cost normally 10 gold pieces, that means he's only going to give you 5 gold pieces for that item. Alright, so if this is set to, let's say 100, he might give you double the price. Because if it's set to 100%, so if it's an item that costs 10 gold pieces, he'll actually give you 20 gold pieces for it. So that's what black market stuff is. Alright, we already went over identify price. Maximum buy price. This is the amount that this merchant will pay as a maximum. So let's say you were selling him a nice magic item that costs 10,000 gold pieces. But if I put 1,000 in here, he will only give you 1,000 gold pieces maximum for that 10,000 gold piece item. Okay. Alright, moving on to the next one. Price percentage for buying items from the player. This is another percentage. It's very much like the black market price percentage, so I won't go into it in detail. And there's another one, price percentage for selling items to the player. Same thing. And then here's the store gold. Right now this merchant has 0 gold that he can barter with. Okay, so if you say, let's set this to 10,000, that means he's got 10,000 gold pieces. If you start selling him a bunch of junk, he's going to run out of money after a while. If you start selling him items and the total of all those items is more than 10 grand, he's not going to have any more money to pay for anything to buy from you. So that's what that means. And on this one, I believe if you set it to -1, yeah, it doesn't say down here. If you set that to -1, that means he's got an unlimited amount of gold. So setting it to -1, just like that, means his store gold is unlimited. You don't have to worry about him running out of gold at all. Alright, so we're going to leave that on 0, and we're going to actually leave that on 0. Now, obviously the way to fix this is to click on this store object right here and setting the identify price to -1. But that means if you save it like this, that means you have to save this area. So if you come up here and you hit close, it's going to ask you if you want to save, and you're going to say yes. But remember, these are in module folders, and they're not save game compatible. So if you make this fix and somebody's already playing the game, they won't see this change. The only way they'll actually have to see this change is if they like reload this module, go completely out of the game and restart over, or reloading the module somehow. So that's not what we want to do. So the second option to fix this is through a script. Now the best way to do this is to look at this guy's dialogue, and let's open up his dialogue real quick. If you have PowerBar, just use Control B and it'll pop that dialogue open for you. Now if you look into a lot of their action scripts, if you see some unique scripts in here that we could possibly piggyback off of, we can change some of the code in it, then let's do that. But right now these are stock scripts. We don't want to change stock scripts. So this is not going to be an option to change any scripts in here. So the next thing we can do, what about some of these triggers that we see on the ground here? Let's take a look at these. Let's move this out of the way. This trigger here, there's nothing on it. This trigger actually does nothing. That can probably be deleted. But alright, there's another trigger right here. This one has a speak node script. That's a generic script. That's not a unique one, so we can't use that one. And there's another one over here, but we don't really want to use this one because you can still walk around the bar and go that way, and we want it to for sure work before we even get to this barkeeper. This one here, we could have potentially used it. Actually, let's take a quick look at something. Let's look up here. There's a surface mesh button. Let's look at the walk mesh here. Yeah, as you can see, all the little green triangles, it's kind of hard to tell right here. All the green stuff is where the guys can walk. Anything that's in these like solid yellow borders or inside these white boxes, that's non-walkable areas. So as you can see, there's a potential where we can actually come in here and walk around this bar and talk to him without hitting that trigger right here, because that trigger does not extend all the way over here. So that's not going to be an option for us either. Okay, so the next option is let's get out of the inn. Let's not save. And now let's open up the area outside of the inn. Now let's use a little logical reasoning here. Let's look at some of the names of these areas. You can see one down here, Moran Port. This is actually the start area for Moran, so let's open up that area. And it might take a while for this one to load too, so let's be patient here. Alright, this one loaded up pretty damn quick too. Let's turn off the surface mesh. Alright, this is the area where you start in. As soon as you enter Moran from the overland map, this is where you show up at. Now the first thing I can see when we're looking at this area is there's an on-enter script right here. This is a unique one, so that means we can probably edit it a little bit and add some of our scripting to fix that. Other than that, there is another trigger right here. Oh, and here's something I can show you too. Right now I'm clicking on this trigger, but you can't really tell if it's selected. And the reason that is because some of this trigger is actually underground. So the selection box is being concealed underneath the ground. And if you remember, something you can do, I explained in a previous episode, is you can come up here to the wireframe box right here and click that. Now you can see it. As you can see, that the selection box is underground. That's why it's kind of confusing. If you look underground, you see how that trigger, it actually goes under the ground, so it's concealed from you. So keep that in mind. That wireframe is actually pretty handy when it comes to triggers. Alright, let's turn wireframe off. So we are actually having that selected. As you can see, there's no scripts attached to this trigger at all. It's just a regular generic trigger. So this trigger does nothing. And it's not a trap. So that trigger's not going to do us any good. What about this one over here? This one's just a generic speak node, so we're not going to edit that too. That's a stock script, so we're not going to make any edits of that. So right off the bat, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to use this area on enter script. Remember, these are event handlers right here. Sometimes they're called hooks. Most of the time they're just called events. If somebody's talking about events, that's what they're talking about. Almost every object in the game has got some kind of an event handler like this. This one here has a specific one called on enter. So let's open up this one. Let's double click it so it's highlighted, and then we're going to hit Control B to open it. Okay, this is a custom script that Kamal obviously typed up. Let's take a quick look at this and see if there's anything in here that we're not going to screw up if we make any kind of edits in here. It doesn't look like it. This one can probably be cleaned up a little bit. Yeah, what this is looking for, it's looking for a global integer, and if that integer equals the number 1, then destroy an object, probably in this area somewhere, with this tag, a lithid 5. And there's another one down here. If there's a journal entry for Telner that is greater than or equal to 11, then destroy Telner. That's what this is saying right here. But we want to add something else to this. And you know what? While we're here, let's clean this up a little bit. Right now, it looks kind of messy. Yeah, a little bit of proper etiquette for making scripts is to always indent stuff like that. And let's see, let's go to this one. Let's indent that one a little bit and indent that. And let's double indent this one. And let's bring that one in. Because what this means is this is an if statement. If this is true, then do this. Anything in between these curly brackets right here is what's going to execute if this is true. If this global integer with this title, recruit Malhinen, equals 1, then execute this code. Alright, let's go down to the next one. Let's clean this one up a little bit. Let's get rid of these extra spaces. Let's indent this stuff over, and yeah, this one's got extra spaces. Yeah, let's delete those extra spaces out of there. And this one does too. Let's get those spaces out of there, double indent that, and let's get rid of those spaces. And let's get rid of these spaces and bring this one in. Alright. Now the script will still run the way it was. It just looks neater this way, and you can it's very easy to see the flow now of how this script is going to execute for us. Now for the sake of this video, I want to stay focused. I just want to fix that store, so I'm not concerned about all this stuff right here. So I'm not going to delete it because it's still going to be necessary. We've got to keep it in this script. All I want to do is just add more code to this so we can fix that store. So for now, let's just ignore these lines of code right here. Okay, because that's really got nothing to do with what I want to fix. So let's just do this. Let's make some space here and let's push that stuff down in the script, and let's start up here. Now, the store that we want to fix is in an N somewhere. And remember, the tag of that store was called Tavern 001. Let's come back out here. We don't need to be in here. Oh, by the way, while we're out here, to explain something, I currently have this trigger down here selected. You can see the green box around it, and it's showing the properties for that trigger. If you want to see the properties for the area like we were looking at before, just come over here to the area, just click off of the area that you're in, and then click back on it. And as soon as you click back on it, now all these properties over here are all the properties for the area itself. So that's how you can find this on enter script and stuff like that right here. Alright, now just to explain what this on enter means, this means anytime anything enters this area, this script is going to fire. Okay, and you can see there's another one called on client enter script. That means whenever the main character enters the area, a script will fire, whichever one's set into that hook right there. For me personally, I'd actually, I would have actually put this script up here in the on client enter area, because that one makes more sense. But that's okay. This is a simple script. It's not going to hurt anything. But just keep in mind, when it's set in the on enter, it's going to fire anytime anything enters this area. So if you spawn a creature into this area, that script is going to fire. If your party enters this area, every party member in your party is going to fire this script. So this script is going to fire multiple times. And another thing to keep in mind too, like right here there's a blacksmith shop. If you go inside this blacksmith shop from this area and then leave that blacksmith shop and then come back into this area again, it's going to fire that script again. So just keep that in mind. That script is going to fire pretty often. But since it's a simple script, it's not going to hurt anything. There's nothing in here that's going to cause any issues. It's just going to run things multiple times. Okay, so we don't really need to be in this area anymore, so let's just close out of it and get it out of the way. I don't want to save it. Alright, now I want to show you something pretty cool that comes with PowerBar, and I hope you guys actually have this thing, so if you're following along with me. If you come up here to this module tab, there's a menu option called Find Instances. This is a really, really handy tool. Click on that and it's going to bring up a little search window. Remember, the tag of that store that we're looking for was called Tavern 001. So let's type that in there and let's check this box here that says search all areas. What this is going to do, it's going to run through every area in this module folder and try to find that object. And what I really want to do this for is to make sure there's no other object with that same tag, because if there's multiple objects with that same tag, this script is not going to work the way I want it to. So this is going to verify that there is in fact only one object with that tag in this module. Okay, so let's do the search, and you can see you can check inside containers and everything too. As you can see, only one showed up, so that means there's only one object with that specific tag, and that's good. That's what we want. So we can also double click this object now and it'll bring it up in the area. That's why this is so handy. Just let it run here and load up. There it is. It just brought us right back to the end, and now we're done with this. We can close out of that. There's our store right there. That is one of the most handy tools right there in PowerBar for sure. Okay. So we have this object here, and like I said, the tag of it is Tavern 001, and we just proved that it is a unique tag. There's no other object like that within this module. So now let's go back over to the script. And like I said, ignore all this stuff. Now the first thing we need to start with is we need to let the engine know that I have an object here and I want you to do something to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually come up with a name for that object, just something that kind of explains what we're dealing with. Now most of the times when you're identifying an object, it's always going to start with the letter of what kind of object type it is. Since this was an object, it's going to start with the letter O. Now you don't have to do this. This is just proper etiquette, so scripters that are looking in a script can know if we're looking at a name of something, that O means it's an object. Okay? And we know it's a store that we're dealing with, so let's just call it store. So as you can see, it says O store. But the engine has no idea what O store means, so that means we have to declare it as something. We have to give it a type. So what we're going to do is come right before store, we're going to type in something called object. and then put a space in there. That's telling the engine, okay, this is an object. And pretty much everything in the game is object. If you come up here to your tab that says show hide, all creatures, all doors, all encounters, items, placeables, sounds, all this stuff in this list, all these are objects. If you come over here and you go to blueprints, all these things are objects. Okay? So, like I said, you have to tell the engine what we're dealing with first when it comes to these types right here. So, this OStore, this is a variable. We're just going to assign this store a name, and we're going to call it OStore. And we're going to let the engine know this is an object. Okay? Otherwise, it's not going to know what the hell OStore is. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put an equal sign in here. We want to tell the engine what the hell is this OStore actually mean. Now we're going to define what OStore means. And this is where functions come into play. Functions are these things right over here, and there's literally thousands of these. You're not going to know what every one of these are, but at least you can get an idea by looking at the name of what they actually do. Like this one here says action open door. Obviously has something to do with opening doors. There's another one down here, action rest. That means it has something to do with causing your party to rest, obviously. Scroll down here. Here's one called get is dead. That must have something to do with, okay, I need to find out if a particular character is dead or not. Now, if you click on these and you look down here in this notes field right here, this will also give you a good idea of what these functions do. That comes in handy, but there is a lot of times though where you're going to be, they don't explain anything. It doesn't tell you exactly what the hell these things do, but you just kind of got to figure it out. So let's stick to the task at hand. What I want to do is I want to identify, I want to define OStore as something, but you have to tell the engine what is the object we're looking for. I want to find an object with this tag. So let's select this tag, and I want to hit Control C to copy that tag. So let's go back over into our script. There's a function called getObjectByTag. If you come up here, and let's just filter it so we can look for it in here so we don't have to scroll through the whole thing. Let's type in by tag. There we go. Now it just filtered all the functions, and it's looking for the phrase by tag, and here's 4 of them that just showed up. You can see one here says get nearest object by tag, and there's another one that says get object by tag, and there's another one that says get object by tag and type. Another one says get waypoint by tag. The one we're looking for is get object by tag. This is the one that will let the engine know this is the specific object that I want, and we're going to assign it a tag. So let's make sure the cursor's right here after the equal sign, and if you just double click on that one, to get object by tag, it'll automatically put it in there for you. Now if you look down here in this notes window, it'll kind of explain how this is set up. Every one of these functions has something called parameters in it. You have to give it like more variables to explain what you want this specific function to do. Now essentially what a function is a little mini script within a script. To make that mini script run, you have to give it information so it knows what it needs to do. Now if you look down here, get object by tag, you can see there's something, a parameter called string, and there's another one for integer. So that means you have to provide that information to this function for it to work. Now this first one, it says there's a string and it's called stag. That's just derogatory. Don't worry about the name. Just know that you must put some kind of string in here or this function is going to fail. But first we have to precede it with a left parenthesis. So let's put a left parenthesis in there. And then you'll get this little help thing. This little help window is going to pop up for you too. It's pretty much the same as this right down here. So we need to input a string. Now remember, the tag of that object was tavern 001, and I copied it. Now tags always have to be, tags are strings. Strings always have to be preceded by a quote, and they have to be ended by a quote. So let's get a quotation marks in there first, and now I'm just gonna hit Control V to paste that in there. So it's tavern 001, and then we're gonna end it with a quotation mark. Now in this one, you can see there's another parameter required, and it's an integer. Now you can see this one says nth equals 0. That's a constant. If we don't need to, what that means is if there's multiple items with the same tag, you can put in here which one you want it to be. So example, if I put a comma and then a 1 and then close it with a right parentheses. Now I always forget to do this, but let me mention this now. At the end of all these lines of code, always put a semicolon. Except for in a if statement like these, you don't need to put a semicolon after those, or a curly bracket like these. You don't need to do that. But any kind of lines of code like this, put a semicolon to end it. That's the end point of that particular line of code. Okay, so in this particular form, it's going to look for an object with this tag, tavern001, minus the quotes. But like I said, whenever you're dealing with a string, you always have to have it surrounded by quotes. And then it's going to be comma, and then this number is going to tell you which one with that tag it's going to select. So for example, let's say there's 3 objects and they all have the same tag, tavern001. Let's say I wanted a third object, I'd put a number 3 in there. Okay, and the way it picks it is by, I think it's by from your position, whichever one's closest to you. That's how it picks it. That's how it knows the third one. I think that's pretty much how, but don't quote me on that. But in this case, we know there's only one of these, so this one, since it's a constant, it's automatically going to be set to 0, and 0 means it's going to be the first one. So that means you don't even have to have this part in there. It can be just like that. Okay, that means now this oStore, this variable oStore, is now defined to be an object with this tag. And we know there's only one object with this tag in the game. So that means the rest of this code, all we have to do is write oStore. Okay, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. Now, let's make another line. Now let's go back to functions again. Let's clear this one out so you can see them all. There's a nice one. Actually, let's do it like this. Let's go back into the N. If you come up here, the object or the property that we're trying to fix is this identify price. Okay. Now the next thing we can do is we can go back over to the script and come over to these functions. Just for the hell of it, let's do a search for the word identify and see if there's a function that has anything to do with the identify price in stores. So let's go identify. Yep, there is. You can see there's one called get store identify cost, and another one's called set store identify cost. And that kind of gives you an idea what exactly it does. Get means it wants you can run a script that identifies what the hell that storekeeper is charging to identify magic items. That's what get is going to do. Now this other one called set, that's where we're actually going to set it. We're going to change it to whatever we give it. Okay. Now if you look down here, set store identify cost, and then now you can see the parameters here is an object we have to give it and an integer we have to give it, and the integer is the cost. And now if you read this description here, it sets the amount a store charges for identifying an item. The default is 100. That means 100 gold pieces is what they're going to charge. -1 means the store will not identify items at all. So that's what we want to do. Okay, so we're going to be up here in the script. Let's set it right here, and now that's the function I want to use. So let's double click that, and it's going to put it in there automatically for us. Now something else I need to tell you is when you look down here in this notes section, you can see it's preceded by something called a void. That means it doesn't return anything as far as a number or anything like that. Okay, like for example on this one that says destroy object, let's come down to this one. This one also says void. And this get object by tag one, this one's preceded by an object. Okay, so that tells you this get object by tag is going to return as an object, and that's why we have it set as an object. Okay, so keep that in mind too when it comes to these functions. You got to pay attention to that sometimes. But like I said, in this one here, set store identify cost, this one returns a void, so we don't really have to do anything with this as far as setting a or declaring it as an object type. Okay, so let's come up here and now let's start it with a a left parentheses. Now, as you can see, we have to assign an object to this. And what this is saying, we have to set the store's identity cost or identify cost, but now we have to let it know on what object are we doing this on. Remember, the object in question is this one here with this tag, and we just gave it this identity, this variable OStore. So let's copy this. Let's hit Control C, OStore, and let's hit Control V to paste it right in there. That means we're going to change the identify cost on this object. That's exactly what that means. Now, let's go back down here to set store identify cost, and let's see the next variable, or the next parameter I should say, is an integer, and we want to put the cost in there. And this particular one is an integer now, so that means we have to make it a number. So these are always going to be separated by commas, by the way, these parameters. So, and I always like to put a space in there. You don't have to put a space in there, but I always like it because it makes it a little bit more clear, so it's not bunched up. As you can see, like this one down here, there's no spaces in between all these parameters. It looks kind of bunched up, but with a space in there, it looks a little bit more neater, and you can kind of identify things a little bit better like that. But you don't have to do that. Just etiquette, okay? So in this one, we want to actually deactivate the ability for this merchant to even identify stuff at all. And remember, down here it said -1 means this store will not identify items, okay? So we're going to put -1 in this one. And then we're going to finish it off with a right parentheses and then a semicolon. Alright, so that's our part of the script that we added. So anytime anybody enters the area in the Moran port, this script is going to fire, and it's going to cause this store to shut off its ability to identify anything. But now, the next thing you have to do, there's a button up here called Save and Compile. Click that and watch down here in the notes. Give it a second or two. Compilation successful, and it tells you where it's going to save it. Alright, it's just saved it in the Campaigns and the Path of Evil folder. Now let's take a quick look in there. I want to show you something else. Let's sort this by date modified so we can see that one. Okay, yeah, here's the script right here. Now you can see there's two of them. The Unenter Bree Moran is the same name. This is the name of the script that we're dealing with. There's two of them here. One's called an NCS, and another one's called an NSS. Now, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that .nss means Neverwinter Source Script. And the .ncs, the one up here, means Neverwinter Compiled Script. If a script is compiled, like we just did, that means the engine can now understand it. And it has to have a compiled script to even understand anything. If you only have the source script, which is a text document, if you double click on it, it's going to open it up in Notepad so you can read it. But the engine doesn't use this. It uses the compiled script, okay? So make sure when you're running these, or when you make a script, always run this compiler up here and compile it. Now, if you have any errors in this, you're going to see that notified down here. It won't compile if there's any errors. Now, let's see if I can screw this up. Let's take out, let's remove this semicolon, as a matter of fact. Now, if we try to compile this, it's going to error out because that semicolon is missing. Let's go ahead and do it now. Now, if you can see down here, it says the errors on line 5. Now, this can kind of throw you off. If you see that, always look at the line prior to where it says too. So line 5 is right up here. That's this line. But there's nothing wrong with this line. The error is up here because we're missing the semicolon. If you see that, always look at the line prior to what it says right here too, and make sure there's no issues up here. So if we put that semicolon back and then compile it again, now you can see compilation successful. Alright, and I think it also says stuff in verify up here. Sometimes there might be information over here. I am using the advanced script compiler, by the way, but you don't really need that. Yeah, sometimes there's more information up here, but right now it's not really telling us anything. But if there's other craziness going on here, let's see. Let's say we misspell this. Let's misspell store. Let's put, oh, by the way, this stuff is case sensitive too, by the way. So if there's a lowercase and uppercase, make sure it is exactly the same. So let's say we put a capital R in here. We mistyped something. That is going to error out. So let's go ahead and try to compile this. Yeah, as you can see, error, undeclared identifier store. See verify window for full context. Let's take a look and see if it's got something new this time. Error, required argument, store missing in call. Yeah, this will probably give you some more information, but you can see it's telling you right now the identifier is wrong because it's spelled incorrectly. So that'll tip you off. So let's make that a lowercase r and then recompile it. Now we're good. Now getting back to this, if something didn't compile, if you look at the date modified, these dates should be exactly the same. If you see they're different, that probably means maybe somebody edited this and they tried to compile it, but it didn't compile. So keep that in mind too. That might be a problem if you notice that these dates are wrong or anything like that. Not necessarily does it mean it's bad, but 9 times out of 10, if this date doesn't match up with this one, then maybe somebody tried to compile it and it didn't compile and now it's broke. So just keep that in mind. Alright, now we know this script is going to work. Let's get all these gaps out of here. Alright, and this is all the original script. We're going to leave that in there, and this is our new script. So we're going to save that. Now, this is a campaign script. If you look in the scripts down here, let's take a look. Yeah, it's all campaign scripts. On enter. Let's look for that one. Unless it put it all the way on the bottom. Sometimes it'll put it all the way on. If you make a new script, and 9 times out of 10, it's always going to be at the bottom first, regardless of what the name of it is. So it's probably not going to be set in alphabetical order. So let's just look for this one. On enter. Bree Moran. Right there. Yeah, as you can see, it's got a C in the little icon next to it. That means it's a campaign script. So that means it'll be save game compatible too. Alright, now we're good to go on this one. We shouldn't have to deal with this at all. So we can just close this out. And we don't need to do anything in the in. So now let's go in game. I don't want to save this. Let's go in game and test it and see if he'll identify anything for us. Alright, here we are in game. Now I want to test a theory. This script should not have actually kicked in yet because we're not actually in that port area. And remember, I said that script will only fire when something enters that port area. We're inside the in, not the port. So let's talk to this merchant right now. Let's open them up and let's see. We got this item right here that's unidentified. So let's right click on it. As you can see, he's still giving us the option to identify for 0 gold. That means the script has not kicked in. So now let's get out of this. Let's go outside and enter the area and then come right back in here. Alright, now we just entered the port area. So that means that script should have fired and it should now have executed. So now let's go right back into the inn. And let's get over here to the tavern keeper and talk to him again. And see if he will now identify that item that we had. Now, here's the item that needs to be identified. Let's right click. As you can see, it doesn't even show the option now to identify the option. It completely disabled that, and that's exactly what we wanted to do. Alright, so that was actually a pretty easy script to make up. I hope I didn't confuse the hell out of you, and I'm sure I probably did again. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff. That was a pretty good one to actually make a little tutorial video on. Alright. So that's about it, guys. Let me know if you're still liking these little tutorials on how I fix stuff. And then I'll see you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen.